To begin, we have to take a trip back in time to the 1870s when Dr. Cesar Lamborso had developed a theory about physical features of criminals. He had later published this theory, and it became an everyday practice for the criminal justice system, and even worse, for everyone in the community. Some of the features he posed for criminals were having large ears, and their noses were very upright and flat. This posed a problem in everyday society because business owners and people in the community started criminalizing people who weren't criminals just for the way they looked. Lamborso's findings were later discredited after this, but his research did not go to waste. A handful of scientists essentially reverse engineered his researching, posing the hypothesis to find if criminals have different brains than the rest of us. They used functional brain scanning in the 1880s to help with their research. With this technology, they found out how criminals' brains showed less usage of their frontal cortex, leading them to be more prone to anger and violence and less control over themselves. Sometime after this, Professor James Fallon at UC Irvine, a specialized neuroscientist, dug up this same research and put it to the test himself. He took a handful of criminals and all ran brain scans on them, and they all had the same pattern, a pattern that suggested a lack of activity in the frontal cortex area of their brain. The research posed by Professor Fallon raised the question that it could be something possibly genetic that all these criminals had in common, which might have caused the lack of production out of the frontal cortex area of their brain. He later had done the same test on himself to compare the data and soon found out that his brain was lacking production as well, and wondered why he wasn't a criminal. Fallon later concluded that biology alone cannot be the explanation for all these criminal acts, and so that led him to wonder what caused them all to act to be criminals. This brings us to the opposite end of the argument, which is, are criminals made? With the research done by Professor Fallon, the answer might seem obvious that criminals are made, but now we need to go into what creates a criminal. Some of the things that go into creating criminals are traumatic experiences, growing up in a criminal household, and the people kids surround themselves with growing up. Starting with living in a criminal household and being raised by criminals, one would first believe they are being taught the right way to do things growing up, just to realize that wasn't the case when it's too late. This comes from the fact that more than half of all juvenile delinquents imprisoned in state institutions and more than a third of adult criminals in local jails and state prisons have immediate family members who have also been incarcerated. This is also the case for the people that children surround themselves with growing up. It's a monkey see, monkey do type of world where if they see someone doing something, they're most likely to follow in their footsteps and grow up down the same path that they are. Criminals being made is a very plausible choice to this theory because of the great effects trauma, parents, and community can have on growing mind of children, leading them down the wrong path, leading to criminal actions. Finally, after learning about both sides, which do you think is true?